Hello everybody and welcome to That's Football. Two questions in relation to Graham Potter. Will he get the sack from Chelsea and should he get the sack from Chelsea? Let's fly into it. Get your comments in below because I think fundamentally the number one thing here is what Chelsea fans want, and in two ways again that will be the factor here. What do Chelsea fans want at the moment, and will they get it? And two, will they change their minds in the future anyway? Because one thing I will always concede about a manager is it's very difficult to turn it around when you've lost the fan base, because you might get a couple of good results and give you a bit of time, but they'll be back on you the minute a bad result happens. And has the tide turned against Graham Potter to a point that it'll be very difficult for him to turn it around? Let's get into it, like I say. But one thing I do want to say is, and I feel like mainstream media, and I know I do a bit of mainstream work, and some of these people that I've seen doing this are actual colleagues, but I feel like mainstream media is always trying to catch up with the buzzwords. You know, you look around TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, there's some really innovative people out there because their finger is on the pulse and they're natural. They're not scripted, they're just natural. And I look around at what I see over the weekend from mainstream, and they're trying to do things that people were doing on YouTube 4 years ago that they don't do it anymore because we've sort of moved on from that. I think there's a much more intelligent conversation going on in fan bases now, and I think we see it on this channel, and hopefully you see that as well, and I think we see it in the wider social media platform as well. And yet people are still like in the mainstream because they missed the boat with the whole ranty rage era. They're trying to do it now, and they do get their clicks and they do get the views, but I find it appalling, really, actually, that all weekend all I've seen is sack Potter now. Oh, that interview, he's got to go. And this is ex-players doing this. And I think that gives you a glimpse into their intelligence and also what they were like as players. Because let's be honest, the obsession with Potter, first of all, that he needs to do interviews in a certain way and he needs to act in a certain way on the touchline. These people who are telling you, oh, sack him for that interview, sack it for that interview, is it not coincidental that they are some of the select few ex-players that are actually gobby and vocal publicly? I mean, they represent less than 0.1% of retired footballers, but they're gobby, opinionated people who probably in the dressing room were gobby, opinionated people. Extrovert, gobby, mouthy. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. That's what they do. What about the introvert footballer, of which there are many, who doesn't need a manager to be shouting and screaming at them in a press conference, who needs an arm round the shoulder or an intelligent chat? So I think this obsession with Potter having to be sacked because of how he does his press conferences, it's childish, it's immature, and again, it's the things that people were doing 4 or 5 years ago. Get him out of my club, get him out, get him out. You know, it's like, it's low level conversation, and I think Chelsea's at a much higher level than that. I really, really do. I feel that when you look at whether Chelsea should sack Graham Potter, the obvious conclusion is to look at what their fans think and see why they think that, and whether there's any recovery back from that. Because and also as well, can I just say, I'm sure people in the chat will say, well, you're a hypocrite because you wanted Solskjaer out and you wanted Mourinho out. My conscience is clean, and I think a lot of United fans' conscience is clean. We did want Mourinho out and we did want Solskjaer out, but both those managers were there for 3 years. Nobody was screaming Ollie out or Mourinho out in the first year as a majority. And personally, as people from the United stand will tell you, I stuck by Mourinho and Solskjaer way longer than most did. I was very vocal at the end because it was time to go. But I think the Potter thing does not compare to Mourinho or Solskjaer or Arteta out or anything else. It's pretty unique because he's not had a pre-season. He's had a load of money spent in January a couple of weeks ago. And it's a very challenging job, and he's very new to it. I think we have seen managers sacked for that. The question is, will Chelsea sack Graham Potter? I don't think so. I don't think they'll sack him at the moment. Having said that, I would admit it could happen any time. It could happen if you lose to Spurs at the weekend. It could happen this week. It could happen in the summer. It might not happen for another year. I think the conversation is there. I think if you lose to Southampton at home, you're going to have that conversation. They're not scoring enough goals. They're not winning enough games. So I think that conversation is there. I don't think they will sack him at the moment, and I don't think they should sack him. And that's the second point. Will they sack him? I don't think so. Should they sack him? I don't think so. But the big problem is, and I think it's the biggest, most important thing, it doesn't matter about some ex-player gobbing off about sack him now. I mean, I find that hilarious, by the way. I find it appalling and hilarious that there are people in the mainstream media screaming to sack Potter with millions of people listening or watching. I mean, one thing I would say about the Solskjaer thing is that I think a lot of ex-players went the other way because they liked Solskjaer and they would never say sack him, even though he needed it to. It's going the other way with certain ex-players who are saying sack him, sack him, sack him. As I said the other day, this is somebody's livelihood. It is important, and you screaming and shouting to the mainstream to sack a manager, you have an influence, and when you say something stupid on the radio or on mainstream media, let's all start saying sack you then and see how you like it. Oh, I didn't mean it. Yeah, because it's become pantomime, but it's not pantomime. This is real life to Chelsea. This is real life to Graham Potter. This is real football. Pantomime this week, let's say this crap, let's say that. I find it really, really bad. And I would challenge those people to be sat down opposite Graham Potter and say, you should be sacked because of the way you spoke in your press conference. I think it's appalling. However, where I do have respect is obviously for the Chelsea fans. They've got the choice to make. They pay the money, they support their club, and if they're not happy, that's where this problem is. And I think that's where Graham Potter and Chelsea Football Club have got to take notice. You've got to take notice of your fans. Now, whether these fans ever liked the appointment of Potter, I know Chelsea fans. I know a few Chelsea fans. They never liked the appointment. So you've given them, you give them a spark, they'll start a fire. They didn't like him in the first place. It's a bit like David Moyes at Man United. He didn't last very long because a lot of people didn't really want him in the first place. So I would say if you're looking through history of any appointment that might be like Potter, the David Moyes appointment, Manchester United, Everton manager to Man United, Brighton manager to Chelsea, is it a bit of a big step up? Yes. Does it mean that you can't do it? No, you could do it, but it won't be popular with all your fan base. It's not like bringing in Ancelotti. You're bringing in a manager that some fans will go, oh, I'm not so sure about this. I'm not actually excited about this. And you're on the back foot straight away. Most managers, I look at United, Mourinho at Chelsea, Mourinho at Spurs. The majority of Chelsea, Spurs and Man United fans, regardless of the style of football, would have been like, he's a winner. I can get on board with this. Let's see what happens. Let's give him a bit of time. The club's a mess. You bring in a manager in from Everton or Brighton and you're like, oh, I'm not so sure if he's up to the job. Yeah, the club's in a mess, but I don't care about the club being a mess. He's not up to the job. I think that's what Potter's up against. I think he is up against that mistrust in the Chelsea fan base that was there from day one. So he's already starting from a false start, really. He's already facing doubt. And then when the results are going badly, it's just going to compile to that. My personal view is that I've seen Chelsea's last two games. I don't know how they've not won two in a row quite comfortably. They've let 2 goals in 2 games, which is acceptable. It's acceptable to let 1 goal in each game. But you should be scoring 2 in each. And they're not doing that. I don't think Chelsea are far off. I still don't see the Brighton blueprint of Potter. But I don't think they're far off. And that's why, for me, if they sacked him this week, or even next week, I think it would be too soon. But I can't control what Chelsea fans think, and you can't. And I think that's going to be his problem. Can he get those Chelsea fans back on side? And to do that, the players have got to give more. They've got to give more for the shirt. They've got to give more for themselves. Things could be worse. Potter could be replaced by a coach that is very defensive, that doesn't suit. You've got a coach who wants to play good football. And Chelsea have got some good footballers. I just think the whole club needs a bit of a siege mentality and they need to be all working off the same page. There's a hell of a lot of players coming. I mean, look, one thing that probably won't get mentioned because people will say, well, they spent £300 million, why are we not winning? One thing that's not going to get mentioned much is the fact that you've bought half a football team a couple of weeks ago, halfway through the season, and it's impossible that they're all going to settle in. I think Chelsea are a huge work in progress. The question is, will Potter get the patience? I'll repeat what I said. If I was a Chelsea fan, it would be very difficult, but I would just go, look, write the season off. Champions League football was going to be very difficult anyway. That's not going to happen. Champions League is the only cup you're in. Let's see how far we can go and let's improve for next season where we want to hit the ground running from the very, very start. Now, that sort of feeds into a lot of options because if Potter, at the end of the season, you lose a load more games, then yeah, admittedly, it's probably time to part ways, even though he hasn't had a pre-season. I still think Potter with a pre-season is very interesting. It's whether he can get that opportunity. But if I was Pochettino, if I was Jose Mourinho, whoever Chelsea fans want, I wouldn't want that job now. I wouldn't want it in February. I would be looking at it and going, they've sacked 2 managers, they've spent 500 million quid, they're going to bring me in 2 months' time, I might not be able to get these players playing well, and then I'll be wanting to get sacked as well. So I think whoever comes in, the summer is going to be key for Chelsea. And as I've said before, a lot of the blame has to go on the board, because for me, Todd Bowley seems to be somebody that he's got his fingers in a lot of pies. How involved was he in the transfers? How involved is he in the day-to-day running of that team? Is Potter a manager or a coach? Because that makes things a lot more clearer as well. Has he bought these players, or has he been given these players and told to coach them? Because if he's a coach, his job's a lot harder than being a manager. If he's a manager and he's picked those players, then there is some liability, more liability there. But if he's a coach and he's having players inflicted on him, it's very, very difficult to do that. So look, I don't think we're any further forward, really, are we? My stance would be to give Potter more time. I think some of the stuff in the mainstream is disgusting, but I think that's just because they're chasing views and clicks. And I think the Chelsea fan base is the one that's most important. And the thing I'm going to observe is, can he maintain and improve his relationship with the Chelsea fan base? To do that, you've got to start winning games. And to do that, he needs a settled 11, he needs the players on board, and he needs the club on board. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy. And I think the one thing I did want to say at the end of this video is, as a percentage, how likely do I think that Graham Potter will be the manager at the start of next season for Chelsea? I'd say 50-50 at this moment in time. And I think it's 50-50 on whether he'll see the end of the season. You can flip a coin on it. And that in itself is a concern. But look, get your comments in below. Smash the like on the video. Make sure you subscribe. And I'll speak to you on the next one.